We're not going to go into all of the details of web applications versus native applications. It's a debate that's been raging for quite some time now, and I expect that it won't be resolved anytime soon. There are some good arguments on both sides, and we're just going to look at a few of the pros and cons for web apps and then a few of the pros and cons for native apps. First, looking at a web app, some of the pros that you can immediately see are that you are just going to be using one technology. When you develop a web application, you could have that web app run on different devices, and you could write that web application using HTML and JavaScript skills that you might already have. You won't have to learn different technologies for different platforms. Also, a web application is going to run anywhere that you have a browser. This is going to make it easier to be cross-platform with the same code. Now, you'll still probably have to write some code specific to the platform that you're running on. For example, you might have to do some things specifically for Android, but because Android has a browser, that user should be able to use that browser to run your application without having to install anything. Along with that, web applications don't really need an app store. You can just have the user go to a URL that is the URL of your website, and they can just run the application from there. Now, web applications have some cons as well. One of the major ones is that web applications are usually slower. Now, this isn't always the case, but anytime you have an application running inside an application, it's probably going to be slower than if it weren't. A web application runs inside a browser, which runs on a device, and it can slow things down a little bit. Web applications are going to have a non-native interface. Now, there are some frameworks that we'll talk about that can help you to make your web application look like a native interface or look like an Android application, but it's not always going to work perfectly, and many users can still tell the difference. Also, a web application is not going to be able to access all of the low-level features of the device. Now, with HTML5, it's becoming easier to be able to access more of the low-level features, but not everything will be available to you creating a web application as would be available to you creating a native app.